You're listening to Sports Connections with David Smale, the show that brings you a fun and intimate look into connections throughout sports. Now here's your host, David Smale.
John Higgins is one of the best officials in all of college basketball. He's working his 25th NCAA tournament. He's also worked 8 Final Fours, hoping for his 9th in this year's tournament. Just like there is for 68 teams that reach the NCAA men's basketball tournament, there's a selection process for the 100 officials who will work the 67 games in each tournament. Best officials are the ones who get selected every year, but there are no automatic bids. Just because you were selected last year was no guarantee that you'd be selected this year. The process starts all over again each year, which makes repeat selections that much more impressive. But he's also the most vilified official in college basketball. Mention his name, and fans of some of the biggest college basketball programs in the country will start telling stories about the times he blew a call against their team that cost them a win. But John doesn't let it bother him. It's just part of the game. He's also got a great sense of humor. The website for his roofing, siding, and gutter company in Omaha is rooferees.com. John, I almost didn't recognize you without your striped shirt, but welcome to Sports Connections.
Thanks, Dave.
I've got to ask you first, how many striped shirts do you own?
Oh, golly. I have 10 or 15 at least. And, I always bring 3 or 4 on the road.
Yeah, for sure. How does it feel, and you and I have talked before, how does it feel to be one of the most respected and at the same time most hated officials in all of college basketball?
Well, I guess it's an honor, to be that person, because obviously the reason they hate you or dislike you, I should say, is that they actually do respect you. If you're official and you're out there, 4, 5, 6, 7 nights a week, there's a reason why you're out there. People want you, and
yeah,
you can ask coaches that same question. They may not like you some nights, but who do you want on that game? You want on official A or you want official C? And evidently I've been that official A for the last few years, and it's a good compliment to the craft and what I've tried to do.
Do you get a lot of negative feedback from coaches, or does most of the negative feedback come like through social media from fans?
It's all social media and fans is your negative feedback. And the one thing I would say about fans, fans, it's basically short for fanatical, and people think with their heart, not with their brains. And I say it at my youngest son's games. I said at my older kids' games when I went to them, just think of it. You got to take that heart part out and just watch it with your own eyes and be real at what you see. And if they did that, majority of people would go, they're really not that bad.
Yeah.
Like you said in the intro about us being correct in the 90 to 95 percentile range. Now, people don't think that, but if you go back and look at the tape, we're pretty good for the most part.
Yeah, for sure. And how much do you listen to the crowd? Because first of all, you don't have a home team crowd. You're nobody's home team. But the angrier they are, does that get you fired up? How does it affect you?
It really doesn't. It can't affect you as an official, because you have to be so thick-skinned that it's part of the game. And again, you think about fans and think of them being fanatical, and they think with their heart again. So if you let that affect you, you won't ever be a really, really, really good official. You got to let that. You got to be calm, cool, and collective, and be that stable, that person that has to be objective, and do what you're supposed to do. That's your job. If you can't do that, then you won't ever rise to the top.
I'm guessing, and I've talked to you a few times in the last year or so. I'm guessing that you've got to have thick skin. You've got to be able to say, you got to be able to think in the heat of the moment. They're thinking with their heart, not their mind. Is that true?
Oh, I do. It happens every single game. And the coach is the same way. The players the same way.
Uh-huh.
And they try to influence you, and it's a give and take. With you just gotta let it slide off your shoulder and in one ear out the other, and sometimes it's funny. You smile, laugh, and giggle and what they say, and it's part of the game, and I don't mind it as long as they don't get personal.
Yeah, yeah. Now you travel all the time. We've talked about the fact that you officiate games in at least four of the, I guess, Power Six with the Big East in basketball. At least four of the Power Six conferences. You're always on the road. Do you ever have people recognize you in an airport or on a plane and want to argue with you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They recognize me a lot, but most of the people don't want to argue with you. That people are really brave, behind a computer and in the stands. But
Yeah.
once it comes face to face, most of the time they go, hey, are you that referee from last night? I'm like, why do you ask that? I asked them that question,
Yeah.
and most of the time they're really pretty respectful out and about. Now you get your ones here and there that will have a slight a comment to you, which but it doesn't happen very often. But you are recognizable, at least in people that are basketball junkies, and so you do get that from time to time.
I mean, it's a great comeback. Why would you ask that question? That kind of sets them back, takes control of the conversation. But other than that, how do you react? Because you're really captive, especially if you're sitting next to the guy on the plane or you're sitting across the aisle waiting to board the plane. You're pretty much captive. You can't go walk away. How do you deal with that?
Well, so, a lot of times they want to ask questions, and I'm happy to answer the questions as long as they're good questions and the right questions. And I just try to be just like another passenger, another friend to the people, and give them how we do things and how we, they're interested in, how many games games a week do you work? And, a lot of the questions a lot of people have, and who's your favorite coach, and who's your your coach you don't like the most. And I never answer any of those questions. What's your
favorite? Strike that one off my list.
Yeah. What's your favorite place to referee? And have you ever refereed a Final Four? And those kind of questions. So I engage in them most of the time. I'm not unless they're completely being a jerk. I engage with them. It's not too bad.
Yeah. I've seen you work a number of games, many of them in person at either Big 12 venues or at the tournament. It's easy to see that you're still in pretty good shape, pretty athletic in your 50s. I don't know exactly how old you are, but I know you're in your 50s.
We won't go to my age.
Okay. Did you play a good? I think you're pretty good at this deflecting thing. That's good. A good trait to have. Let me ask you this: did you play sports as a kid?
I did. I played all the baseball, basketball, and football, and some golf, and so yeah. And I came from a very athletic family. My dad was a longtime high school coach and was very successful, and all the kids growing up were just. We lived a half a block from the school, and we were always with my dad and at the gym and at the football and baseball. And that's just what we did as a family. We were involved with sports, and I was an average player and went to a Division II school, or actually NAI school back then. Now it's Division II. And I was an average basketball player, but I loved the game. And I love to, stay involved in the game, and like my whole family is the same way, and my kids are the same way too.
Yeah. So basketball is your favorite, and maybe your best sport.
Probably, yeah. Basketball is my favorite and best sport, I would say. I love to watch baseball. I'm a big baseball lover. I love to watch it live. I'm not a huge TV guy with any sport, but I would say baseball, but to be involved with the basketball is my favorite.
How did you get involved with officiating? Is that something that I don't want to put words in your mouth. So how did you get involved?
Well, I was just finishing up school. Actually, it's my senior year in college, and back then they played freshman games, and the freshman team was playing a junior college team. Well, the referees, one of the referees didn't show up, and our coach said, would anybody want to referee? And you're going to get paid $20 or $25 to get referee. And I thought, my God, $25, that's a lot of beer money back then. Back in the 80s, that's a lot of beer money. So I volunteered, and I was like, that wasn't too bad. Then when I moved back to Omaha after college, a buddy of mine that I knew for a long, long time, it was a Division I referee, Paul Whitey Castor. He says, you should, try refereeing. And so I tried it, and, started in third, fourth grade, fifth grade, the CYO, and eighth grade. And then within a couple of years, I started getting assigned high school games, and then junior college games. And then that same guy, Paul Castor, said, you got to go to a camp, this referee camp. And I've been starting to work the NAIA and junior college, and you got to go to this referee camp. So I went to this referee camp, the Missouri Valley camp, and Davey Phillips was the boss. I don't know if you remember Davey Phillips. He's a Major League Baseball umpire. He was a boss in the Missouri Valley Conference. And at that time, three-man officiating had started, and I've never refereed a three-man officiating game in my life at that point. So I went to this camp, and then I went home, and I got a phone call, which I didn't believe I really got a phone call from. Back it was on a recording that Davey Phillips had called. I'm like, why would he call? I didn't know anybody there. I didn't know any of the people. I just know who they were. Jim Bain, these guys were observers, and I don't know if you remember Boomer Bain. He was a longtime official and ended up being my boss after Davey Phillips in the Missouri Valley Conference for 18, 19 years. So I got started that way. Then I got in the Valley. It was 88, 89. I got hired. And then the following year, I got hired in the Big Eight by John Erickson. And how I really got it jump started was, I think it was my third year, and I only had 3 or 4 games scheduled, and Boomer Bain was at the game, and I was a fill-in official, and I ended up teeing up a coach, and he really liked that I had some courage and heart, and he ended up giving me about 4 or 5 more games that year, and I worked the Valley tournament. And then from that point on, my career kind of took off.
What's the hardest thing for you? Is I'll ask you later which is the hardest call to make. And I think most people would say it's the block charge, and I'll let you respond to that. But what's the hardest part of being an official? Is it making sure you got the call accurate, making sure you keep control of the game? Maybe if it's getting a little too feisty there, you might call the foul that you might have let go earlier. Is it managing personalities? What's the hardest part of being an official?
I think it's a combination of all things. Having control of the game, being the leader, being a crew chief, managing the game is a huge part of it. But the bottom line is you got to get your calls right. You could right. Try to manage a game all you want, but if you get 2 or 3 out of 10 calls wrong, you're going to have an issue with that game with the coach and the players, and your credibility will go down. So there's a combination of all of it, but you have to show confidence as an official out there. And if you don't exuberate confidence with all your calls, I think you're going to have an issue with fans, coaches, and players. Sure. Your credibility will go down or up, however they you portray yourself. So it's a combination of all of it.
Are there, and I know you're not going to tell me which are the hardest coaches to deal with, but do you have some coaches where you have to establish that you're in control of the game earlier, where others will just let it go a little bit? You understand what I'm asking with that?
Yeah. But by now, at my part of my career, they know that I'm in control. Okay. And they usually don't go after me too often, too hard. Because they know usually that I'll take care of the situation, whether it doesn't matter what it is. Right. But they know where I stand, that I don't usually tolerate a lot of stuff either from players or coaches. They know that for the most part. Now, some of the newer coaches may not, and they usually find out if that's the case. if they cross the line. And that's all, and that's what it's all about. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I've T'd you 5 times or 0 times. I'll give everybody the same respect, and like they have to give to us as officials. But once they cross the line, they cross the line, and it doesn't matter which coach it is.
And I think that's one of the reasons that you are so well respected. I've talked to people in conference offices about it, that you don't let, and I'm going to throw out names. I don't want you to react to any of the names. I'm going to throw out names. You're just as much in control with a Jim Boeheim or a Mike Krzyzewski or a Bill Self as you are with Chris Beard early in his career at Texas Tech, or, pick a coach. You are just as much the authority with dealing with veteran coaches as you are with young coaches. Your consistency, I guess, is what I'm saying, is one of the reasons I think you're respected so much, because you don't change based on what arena or what coach. You think that's fair?
Well, I hope that's the case. And I think you have to be a good official. You have to treat them all the same. Doesn't matter which coach it is. You give them all the same respect. You listen to their questions, and answer them appropriately. So that's what I try to do, and I try to teach young guys. That's what you have to do. Just because Mike Krzyzewski is a coach, you can't let him do something that you wouldn't let the first or second or third year coach do. You can't do that. People as fans and people out in the media think it's, that referees do that, but the good referees don't let anybody affect how they referee and how they call the game. They can't, because it's really, especially with every game being on TV,
right?
It's so visible. You can see that kind of stuff, and you can't let anybody do that.
And I'm going to ask this different. Obviously, I don't want you to tell me who are the hardest coaches to deal with, but who are some of your favorite coaches just to interact with? Where you might see them in an airport, or you might, before the game. I know there's many times before the game you walk up and I've seen you pat a coach on the shoulder or whatever. Who are some of the coaches that you enjoy being a part of the game with?
Oh, I enjoy them all, Dave. I enjoy them all.
Not going to trap you.
Yeah, I enjoy them all. They can name 100 guys. They're all, if you get them outside the lines there in a basketball court, they're all just like everyday guys.
Yeah.
Just like we are. They put their shoes on, their pants on just the same way. So, despite, there's some of the toughest coaches that I've refereed. You get them outside the lines. Most of them are, they talk to you like they're your buddies, and because they're trying to do the same thing. They're trying to win. Yeah. We're trying to give them the best effort we can to be fair, and that's something that you have to do. But I most for the most part, and I get where they're coming from. Yeah. And they're thinking, again, like I said earlier, they're thinking with their heart and not always with their brain. But once they go back and look at film, and we're 9 out of 10 on our calls, they think, I was wrong on that play. And you could ask a lot of coaches, they think that you're wrong in a lot of plays, but once they go back and break down the film and they see it, he was right on that play. So yeah, there's a lot of them I like, and I'm not going to say who I would dislike or not,
yeah,
but
yeah.
That's for when I'm done and retired.
Well, I'm going to change direction before I get teed up here. So let me talk about the game itself. What is the hardest call for an official? Is it the block charge?
I don't think so. I actually think a quick out of bounds play opposite the lead official underneath the basket, or somewhere it's in a gray area. The quick ones those are extremely hard, because you have 3 or 4 or 5, 6 different hands in there, and it goes out of bounds real quick. And unless you're in the exact position to see that, those are really, really, really hard. Everybody used to think the block charge play was, I think if you referee the defense and then locate the offensive guy, you're usually going to get that block charge play correct. You got to see if that defense sets in a legal guarding position off the get-go. And then if you referee that play all the way through the contact, you usually are pretty good. You're a lot better than people think. Now, if you're in a bad position, it can look totally different to you.
Right.
But I would say that the two toughest calls is that quick out of bounds play and the goaltending play are the two that I think are two of the hardest in basketball.
I had an opportunity to do one of these podcasts with Gene Steratore, who obviously had a long career as a college basketball official, probably better known as an NFL official, and now in his role doing the CBS studio for NFL games. But he described it this way: officials don't, specifically with the block charge, but he's probably applying to any call. Officials don't anticipate the call, but they anticipate the play. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
And explain what the difference is.
Well, you can't anticipate the call. You can't anticipate the play. Just like when you got to drive to the basket, you got to be thinking block charge play. Depends on where you're at on the floor. If you're the lead official underneath the basket, you got to be thinking block charge play at all times, especially when a guy's coming hard and you see a defensive guy setting up. So you anticipate that play. Something's going to happen, and if you do that, you're going to get the play right. But if you anticipate the call, you got big problems. Now you're going to be wrong, and you're just guessing.
Yeah,
and you just can't guess on plays like that.
Yeah, for sure. I want to switch gears a little bit. Just talk about your schedule. How do you manage to get downtime, and how do you stay fresh with the fact that you're on the road so much?
Well, it depends on, like, this year's a little bit different than most years because everything's changing. Like normally I would do my travel, 5, 6, 7 weeks out, have my hotel set, my airplane tickets bought, my rental cars reserved. I had all that done usually 5, 6, 7 weeks in advance. This year, it's just totally different. This year, it's a week out because like today's game, it got canceled. And then I had 3 or 4 other games that they were going to put me in, and those all got canceled today. So, and that was like 2 days ago. So, but normally what I try to do is take the first flight somewhere, get to the hotel, make my phone calls to the office, to my family, and then I would get a little bit more business done. Then I would take a nap for an hour or two, just lay down and relax. Get up and get a lunch or what have you, and then get going to my game whenever that may be. And I try to go to cities where you don't have to drive a long way anymore. It used to be I would drive, doesn't matter, 5, 6 hours, do the game, turn around, drive home if I was close enough.
Yeah.
But now I try to stay where I can, an hour drive, a couple hour drive at the most after a game. Just because you do get tired because you get back at midnight after a 7 o'clock game, you got a 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning flight. That's not a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
Although I have perfected how once I get on a plane, I'm out usually before it takes off, and I wake up when I'm landing, and sometimes I don't realize what city I'm in until I really get in the airport. So we have become. All officials have become perfectionists and travel agents. We're really, really, really good at doing travel stuff, and you get in the same routine. You stay at the same hotels, eat at the same restaurants.
Right.
You get in that routine. So,
and you've thrown in this year, or you haven't, but it's been thrown in the fact that you have to get tested before every game for COVID. Is that correct?
Yeah. That is correct. If you haven't tested out, as far as I had COVID early, like around Halloween, so I'm exempt for almost the whole year. But a lot of guys, they'll have to send in 3 tests a week, plus I'll have to test the day of the game or day before the game, 3 to 4 hours prior to the game. So it's a more difficult year for all officials, where with the mask, having to wear a mask, and well, that part of it just on airplanes and airports is not fun to do.
Yeah.
But the masking and the testing is, everybody's out of their same routine. unless they've experienced the COVID and they're able to be exempt from it, exempt from the testing. But it's a more of a challenging year, that's for sure.
You obviously like the job, John. What do you like most about it?
Just being close to the game, being involved in the game, and being competitive with other officials. I mean, you're all still friends, but you're still competitive and trying to be the best you can be. And it's like that in anything. I'm competitive with my work, with other people, and just being competitive and being close to that game, the game that I grew up with, and being part of it. It's a lot of fun.
You've obviously been in the NCAA tournament a number of times. You've been in, as we said, you've officiated the Final Four 8 times, hoping for 9 later this month. Do you ever take it for granted that you're officiating in the NCAA tournament?
No, you still get those butterflies, even the first round games, even going to the tournament. You get excited. It ramps you up. It gets that adrenaline going. You can't take it for granted, because someday it's going to stop, and which is fine. I've had a great career, I think, at least in my mind. I have, in my family. But you can't take that stuff for granted. I don't believe. It's like anything. Once you think you've been there, you're going to get knocked down, and it just you just can't take it for granted.
Yeah. There's a whole industry called bracketology, where people spend countless hours trying to figure out which teams are going to make it. I'll bet nobody is trying to figure out which officials are going to make it. But if the officials are bad, the tournament will be bad. How do you respond to criticism about officiating in general? Not just you, but, the refs are all bad. How do you respond to that?
Well, again, if you go, there's a reason why they got to the NCAA tournament. And every game is charted and ranked, as far as every league has people that do that. So they put the best guys in their conference tournament. They put the best guys they think are available for the NCAA tournament. And most of those guys are probably scoring in the 90% and above range. And that's so. Again, if they don't really think with their heart and think with their brain, and they find out that they're graded every single game, every play gets graded. Like, I'll get 15, 20, 25 reports from the NCAA people, the head guy, and then there's 4 guys underneath them that chart and grade games. They'll say, they'll send you a report that says, out of 16 whistles, you had 15 correct. You had 1 no call incorrect. You had, a bunch of correct calls. Take a look at this play at 14-12. And so fans can think a lot like they do. But at the end of the day, the people that get into the NCAA tournament are pretty good guys. Right. Now, they move on usually because they're graded out well in that part of it. But they're pretty good referees. And then you move on by how you fare, and then some, how many tournaments you work, there's a lot of different ways they critique it, and I believe, I don't know 100% because I'm not in those rooms, right? But I'm sure there's ways they figure out who's the best of the best, and if I worked ACC, Big Ten, all those big hard games, you'll probably have a better chance of moving on than a guy that's a first year guy or second year guy or third year guy that hasn't had those games and had those environments. So some of them are maybe as well qualified, but they just haven't been in those spots yet.
And I hadn't planned on asking that, but that's a really good point. Talk about why that is, John, because I think somebody who's used to being in front of, like you were supposed to be at the the Breslin Center at Michigan State today, 16, 17,000. And I've seen you at Allen Fieldhouse, and I've seen you in, doing games in some of the bigger and better venues throughout college basketball. You're used to the pressure that's going to come with the NCAA. Just talk about being able to handle the pressure as being a critical element to being a good referee.
Well, that goes along with the experience and how many games I've refereed over my career, and seeing a lot of stuff, a lot of different things that have happened in my career. And that experience really helps you as an official, that there's not a lot of things that happen out of the normal.
Right.
However, when those things happen, if they happen, you can respond to it in a positive way, in the correct way. Whereas maybe a guy hasn't seen it or done that, won't know what to do, and know what to expect, and can't maybe handle that situation. Not saying they can't, but if I've done it for so many years, there's not a lot of things that you haven't seen. Although every year there's one or two or three things that happen. You said, golly, I'd never seen that thing happen before. I never had that situation happen in a game.
That's a good answer. I don't know that a lot of people realize that the only round of games that officials are selected for before the tournament is the first and second round. That the ones who make it to the Sweet 16, the 36 who go to those games, are selected based on how you do in those in the first and second rounds. And the ones who make the Final Four are the ones who did the best in the Sweet 16. Does advancement ever enter your mind as you're calling a game, or are you so focused on the game in front of you that you don't even think about it?
I don't even think about it, because if you don't do well in that game, you're not going to advance.
Yeah.
And if you kick a rule, you're not going to advance. If you think that way and you referee to the tape, as I would always say it, you won't do very well. You just won't. If you don't just let your skills and your natural ability take and do the game the way you know how to do it, you don't have to worry about that the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, because it probably won't happen. So you just go out and referee and let the chips fall where they fall, and you can't worry about that. You can't worry about something that's out of your hands, and you just do the best you can, just like you do in anything else in your life. It doesn't matter if you're playing sports or you're doing school, whatever. Let the chips fall, and that's what you get. That's how you got to do.
Now, my understanding is they don't tell you how you did. They don't tell you if you don't advance. They don't tell you why. How are your results communicated to you, other than the people who say, okay, you're going on to the next round? How do they communicate to you so you can work on things that may need work?
They don't really, you don't really know how that works, but you usually know if you've had a good game or not as a referee. Yeah. You really do. If you've nailed it. And then if there's some iffy plays in the game that you're going, boy, I don't know if I referee good enough to move on. Like there were some years where I thought I had a chance to go to the Final Four. I didn't move on. Then some years I went to the Final Four and I thought, well, I thought I had a decent game and I didn't think it was perfect, but then you move on. So it's all, I think, in the eye of the beholder, and how things shake out with there's a committee, there's the 4 NCAA advisors, the head guy with the NCAA. So how they work, I'm not sure totally. I have the idea of how they work to move yourself on, but it's the whole process is to get the best guys into the Final Four.
How quickly do you find out?
Oh, they'll let you know on probably the day after if the first and second round are done. The day after, probably if the ends on a Sunday. I think the dates are different this year, but if the ends on a Sunday, I believe the following day, by that evening, they'll contact you or email you and say, hey, we're moving on to either the round of 32 or 16, or I think it is, or 16 and 8 if you've gone to the first or second round. They usually select so many guys for the first and second round.
Right.
And then a few of those guys will only work the first round. Then they'll have standbys at every single game. So I think that, the first day is 96, I believe, and then they cut it down from there. But it's a day after the last game is played is when they let you know.
Okay.
They don't tell you what game you have. They'll just tell you this, where the site is. Although this year it's a little bit different, this coming up year.
Yeah.
So,
John, how long do you think you'll keep refereeing at the highest level?
That's a good question. Might want to ask my wife that question. She'd like me to quit every year. So it's getting closer to the end. We'll see. I'll do it year by year. Every year I do that. I've done that the last few years. So it just depends on how I feel. And I have a son that's a freshman in high school now. I have a granddaughter that's 1 year old now. So it all depends on my family and how I feel physically too.
But you're still enjoying it. So there's
I still enjoy it.
Pulling at you. Yeah.
No, no.
What advice would you give to young officials?
Listen to your peers. Listen to people that have been there and done that. Keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut. Don't because it's a dog eat dog business when you're coming up. Because guys are, if you make, I remember when I made it, and I mean, there's a lot of guys that were very, very jealous that I had made it. And, they try to take you down and by what they say about you. And my advice to any young official is to just keep your mouth shut, do your job, listen to your peers, listen to your boss. And again, let the chips fall where they may. And if you're good enough, you'll be there. If you have that thing, which I call it, if you have that it, like Michael Jordan had that it, right? Nobody taught him that it part.
Right.
He had a competitive drive and he was a great player. If you have that as an official, if you have that it thing you have good judgment, you have good communication skills, and you're in the right place at the right time, you'll do well.
All right. Well, I've got one last question for you. Kind of, we've had some fun here. So a little bit tongue in cheek. Do you want me to not run the video with this? Because I'm sure there's people saying, I knew that guy needed glasses.
No, that's all right. I only need them for up close. If from far away, I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So up close, I could do it and I can see you, but it's a little bit blurry up close.
Yeah.
I can still read without my glasses, but
the call that's across the court or in the lane or something like that, you can see perfectly.
Well, people don't think that, but it seems to be I'm still good at that.
All right. Well, John, I appreciate it very much. It's always good to connect with you. I'm looking forward to actually someday meeting you face to face. We've talked on the phone a bunch of times and emailed and stuff, but I'm looking forward to meeting face to face, and I wish you the best.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Sports Connections with David Smale. Make sure to subscribe, follow, and rate the show from your favorite podcast platform. You can learn more about David Smale and his work by visiting davidsmalebooks.com. Don't forget to join us weekly for new episodes. Until next time.